Hi, everybody. Welcome to season two, episode one of Making AI Possible. My name is Nicholas Beaudoin. I'm the director of AI programs at Caltech's Center for Technology and Management Education. And I couldn't be more excited to bring to you Rob Petrosino. Rob, I'm going to say a couple words. I'm going to boost your ego just a little bit, and then we'll get rolling from there. Um, First of all, Caltech CTME is a premier executive education center that is located in beautiful Pasadena, California, at the center of the California Institute of Technology's campus. We focus on bringing various faculty from Caltech, various researchers, just at different labs, and then also different industry experts who are at the top of their fields within AI and systems engineering. We have two courses that I'm very excited to bring up. One is launching mid-February called AI for Executives, Rapid Blueprinting for Organizational Adoption. And what it is, it's a remote course. It's taught over 6 weeks, once a week during lunch. So it's a 90-minute lunch period where you will have an instructor, myself, who will talk to you about AI adoption, how to create blueprints for said AI adoption, and create those from use case to implementation deployment plans. Jen Garcia on the background research will put in the information so you can select that and sign up if you have one lunch available a week. Another course we're very excited, which begins on February 22nd, located in beautiful Pasadena, is our Deep Tech Week. This is a hands-on 1 week where managers and executives develop different technology roadmaps for their own use cases around AI and other advanced technologies. These are led by expert sessions and behind the scene lab visits from our Center for Autonomous and Systems Technology, where you get to see how AI is integrated with robotics, all the way to our seismology lab, where big data platforms stand up, how we go about analyzing and understanding earthquakes even more. So various different types of technology and AI adoption being built in the real world and scaled during your sessions. But more importantly, why we're here, Rob, we met during the conference board in Brooklyn. I heard you speak about various I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think you said it was a 4 out of 10 in terms of scariness. And so that immediately got me excited to bring you on the show. Is maybe we can have our 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 session. But Rob is a strategic advisor for the Federal Bureau of Investigation on Artificial Intelligence and National Security. He currently serves as official title the Strategic Engagement Advisor at the FBI and has had innovation initiatives spanning spatial computing, machine learning, generative AI, and is currently the Chief Innovation Officer at Peak Activity. So, Rob, you're recognized for your ability to translate complex AI risks as a premier storyteller. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to go as dark as we want to. I'm happy to go as light and happy as we want to. I'm just happy to be here and kicking off the second season, right?
Second
Like
season,
bar
yeah.
high.
Well, I mean, it's either as high as you get or as low as you get being the first episode. So we're going to bring the camera back, proverbially a little bit here, and you sit at a rare intersection of this industry innovation and national security. You see what's happening on the ground in industry, but you're having conversations at high levels in government. How does this dual vantage point shape the way that you think about AI risk compared to somebody who's purely at the commercial side?
Yeah, I think the great part about the commercial side or right the private sector versus the public sector is you have a lot more liberty to do things bad quickly when you don't have governing bodies or governments or officials or rules, regulations, and legislature that you have to deal with. Right. So that fail fast methodology that everyone talks about, like, oh, let's do this thing really quickly. Let's have this moonshot. Let's have this crazy idea that we kind of throw out there within the world of artificial intelligence and try to see if it works. You can do that with the private sector, which is really fun, right? So I always say, like, I'm a man with a foot in two canoes. I have this private sector commercialization AI usage, and that canoe is rowing all oars in the water as fast as humanly possible. And I have the public sector side, right, where it's government focused and subgov, what I say, like, right, energy and government subsidized orgs, where they're like, well, we'd love to do this, but right, and this sounds like a good idea. However, or did you check with legal first? So I think that that's the really interesting part is the paces and pressures that come from both sides. And my role, like you said, is to help bridge that gap between the two and make sure everyone's aware of what's going on.
Yeah. During your talk that you gave in Brooklyn, I think it was last November, you said that we're seeing deep fakes now move from novelty to this real world fraud and use of political misinformation. Given that was the title of the talk around deep fakes, I wanted to start off around this area because that's what most people are familiar with.
Sure.
What necessarily changed? Was there a specific moment that brought your attention to that, or is this something that's just always been percolating up?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is we've seen deepfakes for a long time, right? The most noticeable ones go back to like 2020, right? We saw deepfakes of President Zelensky, right, saying that he was giving up the war in Ukraine. And that kind of bubbled this up to the surface. Now, if you went back and looked at those, you would be like, these are awful. I can't believe people believe this, right? And now we kind of moved a little bit forward in 2022 and 2023, where we started seeing that in the political world, right? We had 30,000 phone calls in New Hampshire that was a deep fake of President Biden's voice saying, don't go out and vote. And now we're at the point where the political deepfakes that happen at almost every single international event, right? The recent events in Venezuela, there's deepfakes of President Maduro on doing various things after he was captured in these different settings. And although they lean towards satire, they do help craft a narrative, or at least to a degree, change opinions when it comes to these different ideas. So I think that they've always been around. I think they've become much more publicized and viewed. And I think our social dichotomy with our reliance on social media to a degree has only accelerated our willingness to view this content and consume it in a way. But yeah, it's been around for a really, really long time and it's not going anywhere. I think the big tipping point, though, is the technology to create these went from okay to nearly indistinguishable in about 4.5, 5 years. And that's very scary because the tech is not going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah. We always think that Gen AI based security threats are things that happen to other companies. It happens to other people. It never happened to me. Based on what you're seeing, if you had a crystal ball, and this is Rob's instantaneous no methodology survey, what
Sure.
percentage of organizations do you think have already experienced some kind of Gen AI related security incident?
100%. There's not a doubt in my mind that every single organization, top to bottom, has seen some type of generative AI attempt at or forward focus person using Gen AI in a nefarious way to elicit
Hmm.
information, to employment. It's 100% at this point. I think from that 100%, 40% are willing to say it's happening to them. Another 40% are completely unaware. And I think another 20% are being dubious about how much it's impacting them, right? The easy one to call out is every single organization that has a job posted online has seen, it's more than likely they've seen an AI generated resume come across and apply for that role. It's just whether that Gen AI resume was rooted in some level of truth
Yeah.
or no truth. Right. So like there's variances on that side of it. So I think it's 100%. I think that there's a lot of people that are aligning to the fact that they've seen it or are willing to admit that they've seen it. And then I think that there's some that are just being dubious and saying like, oh no, it'll never affect us, and or ignorant and bliss is a
I remember
possibility.
in some of your previous talks, you've given this example of, I think it was a North Korean official who masqueraded as like a California or Silicon Valley employee. Can you give that example? Because I think that fits perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a public case now, right? There's a cybersecurity company that's called Know Before. They do cybersecurity training for basically every single Fortune 500 plus organization out there, or have had some impact in that cybersecurity training side of things. They actually hired a deep fake of a North Korean technologist. I believe they were a back end developer, and they were employed by a cybersecurity company for 3 months. And it came down to them using AI to change their image and likeness, as well as some voice changing tools that were probably used and employed to let this person realize that they were not real. Right. And that's one microcosm of a cybersecurity company that's very, very focused on making sure that they're protected. And you have tons, tens, thousands, millions of other hiring managers that are out there that are probably talking to people that are using AI deepfake technology in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
either to change their voice or to change their image or their background, or maybe just make a fake certificate that they know what they have to do for this job that they're trying to get.
As
This
if the job market for entry level AI positions wasn't hard enough already. You are now competing against this.
absolutely right. It's one of those things that um, we talk about often as being like times to really have like hard luck getting a role, right?
Yeah.
Recession based, right? These downturns in the economy, et cetera. And these rapid accelerations of technology are equally as hard as employment for all levels, but entry level roles are nearly impossible because
Yeah.
if I can't automate or use AI to, get rid of that position as an organization, I'm going to try to do that versus have someone that potentially can grow in that role. But I think that there is a symbiosis where AI and employees can work together.
Mm. So we talked about kind of this one outsider threat with this North Korean deepfake. Walk us through the typical Gen AI powered phishing attack that you're seeing today.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So we used to see phishing at what we would call like the mid-senior level. This person has authority within an organization. I'm going to do some research about them and then try to attack their email or their phone or their, literal phone call, text messaging, etc., and try to get information out of them. And we saw it at this level because this level has a level of authority. If I can get their information or I can get them to give me information, it may allow me to get into a business compromised email, right? A BCE is the standard way that you can extract, right, funds potentially from an org because, as many of the viewers know, money makes the world go round. So if I get a business compromised email, I could change an invoicing record, I could tell someone to do something, etc. So it used to have to be I have to go to Nick's LinkedIn profile, and then I have to go find Facebook, and then I have to go find his Instagram. I have to go capture all this open source intelligence. Well, now we just have AI tools that do that. Hey, find me out everything I can about Rob Petrosino. Cool. All right, here's his LinkedIn, here's his Facebook, here's his Instagram, here's this, and can extract and pull all that information. Well, that research time went from days to minutes. And now I can start attacking all those matrices where I'm looking at every single messaging platform and every way that I can get to him using AI. Hey, craft a LinkedIn message from someone in sales that may be applying to this. Craft a Facebook message from his great grandmother's sister in Texas who wants to talk to this person. Right? You can individualize the messaging. And because of that, you now have research that happens extremely quickly, messaging that happens really, really quickly. That's very specific. Well, what does that do? That means, well, I don't just have to target that level. I can target a whole department, a whole division, and whole org. So artificial intelligence is really a force multiplier for bad actors, which is where we used to be worried about, hey, Fortune 100, 200, right? 500s, make sure you're aware, make sure you go through the cybersecurity training. Don't click the link, right? Don't talk to the people, don't tell the people the thing, make sure you later gram, don't Instagram. Now you have to take that to mom and pop businesses because the effort to get 15K out of a mom and pop shop is the same as me trying to get 300 million or $3 million from an S&P 500. Is probably easier too. So that force multiplication is really where it gets scary because now we see it go from mom and pop to individual. Can I just get Rob to give me something I want or Nick to give me
Yeah.
something I want?
It's interesting. One story that we regularly tell is in our programs is how technology and how AI is adopted. And I forget which podcast this was, but they did a tremendous job talking about how AI adoption and computer adoption are completely the opposite of each other. So, 1950s, 1960s, government mainframes. Then you have in the 70s, you have large enterprises adopting, early 80s, small, medium businesses, and then the personal computer. And it slowly, slowly, slowly starts drifting down to the individual. However, with AI, especially with, generative AI, I can download the same model that somebody at Google can download at the same time. OpenAI releases the latest GPT, GPT-6. Hopefully, it goes better than GPT-5 release, but I can download it right here on my phone. And so that acquisition of adoption moves from individual to small mom and pop companies because
Mhm.
they can use ChatGPT. Whereas if I'm working at, I'm just to make this up, the Capital Ones or the Citibanks of the world, you don't have access to that.
Yeah.
And finally, of course, your world, government being the latest possible to be able to get that type of technology. So when we see the acquisition moving from individuals, small businesses, large enterprises, say I'm working at a large enterprise and I've been given access to Microsoft Copilot. And I think I've publicly said that Microsoft Copilot is essentially the new Clippy at this point.
Mhm. Yep.
It serves a purpose, but there are many, many areas where it could be improved. And I look over here and I go, gosh, I've been using ChatGPT the last 2 years. We just wrote out Copilot. Would it really hurt if I just drop these schematics real quick to just, get an answer because it knows what I want? Talk about how shadow AI is starting to creep in, and that was a very long interlude to the question, a very short
Yeah.
question, but hopefully that tees it up a little for you.
No, it's 100% correct, right? I always call it, instead of calling it the inverse of commercial development and adoption of technology, I always call it like the Amazon effect of things, right?
Mm,
Amazon operated in a direct to consumer model at an operational loss because they knew in the future they can consume more upward mobility into enterprises as well as organizations and start to convert that to revenue. ChatGPT, same thing. I'm going to only charge $0 for AI, and then eventually get them into $20 a
First
month, and
use
then
is always free, Rob.
yeah, and then eventually get them into the $200 a month package, right? So it's that sassification of the world. Great, absolutely makes sense. When we look at what that means, right? It means that I, as an individual user, have a level of comfortability with the tools that I've adopted because I've adopted them. That means that Microsoft did this study, 78% of employees bring their own AI tool into the market, right? And you already told us why. Well, it's because of this thing, right? I
Yeah.
could bring to work and make my life super easy and just be like, all right, well, I just got to do this. All right. Oh, well, it's banned on this computer. Oh, thank God I have 5G, right? Like I can do it all very relatively quickly. So that pace of change that internal IT orgs have to go through is way faster than what an individual can consume and adopt. That gives you this big gap. You have the gap of individual contributors wanting the technology to use that's going to make their lives easier. And you have the organizations that are saying, we only want them to use a single tool. Okay, so now we have shadow AI usage
Hmm.
between those 2 points. The risk is, what are you bringing into AI? Who has that AI? What does the company that's running that AI want with it? Are they going to do anything with it? And you see a bulk of the major providers like Gemini, like ChatGPT say, we're not going to train on your data. Great. But are they going to train on your prompts? Yeah. Are they going to train on the responses from the system? Yeah. Well, your data is interesting. But if I have your prompt and your response, do I need the data? That's the conversation that you start need to have with yourself, because I may not need your specific data, but if I have the prompt and the response, I can fill the gaps in between. So
Okay.
that's where things start to get very, very interesting. And that's where, these larger organizations who have internal investigation groups look at how people and what people are accessing, even if they are off Wi-Fi. Are they bringing things out of this, right? This is standard downloadable PDFs and like patents and that type of stuff. Are they extracting this information? Who can and can't? What do those digital footprints look like? But once it's out, you can't get it back. And we saw this manifest itself with the DeepSeek stuff, right? You could log into the system, use a tool that was created in the PRC, the People's Republic of China, right? That clearly had
Mm.
ties to other PRC based platforms and were linking users' identification across the board to each other. And if I use that tool, well, that group definitely doesn't have my best interest in mind as a public sector sub gov kind of guy. So I can't use that tool, but that's a feasible and reasonable thing. And all of these SaaS tools that are out there that are not foundational models could be doing the same thing, right? Oh, what's the
It,
best HR tool for Y, right? They could be doing the same
mhm.
thing in theory.
Yeah. That's kind of when I see the clips, of course, LinkedIn, fill in the blank is dead, SAP is dead. Yeah, it is. I automatically think about the examples that you're just giving. How do teams prepare for this type of AI risk? So when leadership, you have CIOs, CTOs are making declarations that you can only use, let's say, Microsoft Copilot, or you can only use ChatGPT Enterprise. How do they ensure that folks aren't mishandling sensitive information and going to their tool of choice?
Yeah, I think the biggest there's the first step always has to be is the board as well as workers educated about what AI is? From a standard of do they know actually what artificial intelligence is? Right. And the easy way to ask this is if you walked around your office or your building, you say, hey, what's AI versus automation? It's a really good way to tell if people are educated about what artificial intelligence is and what automation is. That'll set a level playing field. So, all right, we do the education aspect. Good, great, grand, wonderful. Now what? Well, now the board needs to be transparent on how they're going to use AI to impact individual workers, and individual workers need to be a part of the conversation on what AI tools are needed and where they're needed, right? The best and most successful implementations wind up having to say, hey, I'm going to take the 20% worst part of your job and I'm going to give it to AI to execute so that you become a human to review it versus you're going to do this work and AI is going to do this other work that you actually like to do. That doesn't work. So it has to be a bi-directional flow of information, has to be
Yeah.
able to be across the board. And if we think about this from like the logical, like public sector side, I want to do the same thing. That's why DHS has a partnership with, I think they're working with Grok and or Gemini. Another group, Department of Homeland Security, is working with a different tool. They're bringing these tools in to say, hey, use these tools so that you're aware and educated about it. Now let's build use
Mhm.
cases that are actually successful and meaningful. We all can look at Copilot if we work in the private sector and go, man, this stinks because of X or Y. Great. We know that now. What's the plan to start adopting tools or building things that are actually going to be meaningful and impactful? So I think it has to start with education, has to start with transparency, and then finding use cases that are actually horizontal within the organization that are going to build success.
And in the past, you said that CIOs and CTOs are used to leading these large scale initiatives. And I think it was a YouTube interview you were on. I can't remember which one it was, but you said they're essentially steering battleships.
Yeah.
And when steering battleships, being able to move quickly is very difficult. But AI completely changes that tempo. So what fundamentally changes for defenders when cyber attacks are no longer this human pace, but this AI driven pace essentially at machine speed?
Yeah. This is the controversial hot take that a lot of people get mad at me about, but I don't think artificial intelligence should sit within the traditional IT organization. IT and CTOs are very, very good at selecting the right tool, going through the RFP process to find the tool, the RFI for information related to that tool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that process takes extremely long amount of time, right? Your fastest RFP, everyone on this call who's ever worked in an organization ever, it doesn't matter if it's public or private, knows we have a 6-month process to buy a tool. That doesn't work with AI. So you have to unfortunately move AI out of and move it into its kind of own situation where CTOs and IT are aware and can inform and can help AI develop within the org, but it cannot be the sole responsibility of them. When we look at defenders for this, The best defenders are looking at the tools that are available within the technology that they already own and operate and justifying changing a process to adopt that tool when necessary, not adopting a tool and not changing a process, right? So I always have people at the top layer, and then I have a process that people are following. Technology supports that process. Okay. So if I just rip and replace the technology, the process has to change. If I don't change the process, guess who gets mad? The people. So I have to be aware of all three of these. And if I'm looking at the technology features specifically within the AI space for defenders, I have to look at that AI feature and say, okay, yes, this makes sense for us to adopt. Yes, we can change this process. These have to both happen at the same
Yeah.
time for us to actually be successful. So the pace of change has to remove a lot of the human confined aspects and kind of borders we put up when it comes to technology and realize that this is more transformational than it is just a piece of tech because everyone's using it. They're just not telling you about it. And you have to figure out a way to get your hands around it. And the only way you can get your hands
Mm.
around it is being honest and truthful that you don't know everything because it's nearly impossible to know everything that's happening.
Those are really good points. So we've talked a little bit about, I've talked a lot about what's happening at the Fortune 500, what's happening within organizations. Tell us what's happening at the nation state level.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Without getting into too many specifics, there's already been a bunch of press releases about different divisions of the U.S. government adopting pieces of technology. Right, I believe the Department of War has adopted. Department of Homeland Security has a public release on it. Department of Health and Human Services has a release on their AI tools. I don't believe the Bureau has put out anything at this point. It could be wrong within the last week or so, but there's already an alignment of this technology brought into our systems will make our employees' lives better, faster, easier, right? What I pride myself on whenever I have a conversation with the government side is, hey, remember your main KPI should be employee satisfaction. I say this to the private sector as well, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's private or public. If your main KPI is employee satisfaction, you will have a reduced amount of churn, right? And you'll have a higher adoption rate on the tech tool that comes in. So they're already starting to align to these. We've also seen executive orders come out like Stargate, right? A couple months back, $500 billion to start pushing artificial intelligence as within the United States as a key piece of technology for us. So we need to make the investment from that side. There's been new executive orders that have come out as well to make sure that artificial intelligence is top of mind as a national security aspect. So we're starting to put in momentum funding to make sure that we maintain our sovereignty and reliance on other nations when it comes to AI, because if an AI is built somewhere else, does it have your best interest? You can say this as an individual, you can say this as an org, or you can say this as a government. That means that we're at least starting to do the right things. We also have chief AI officers in every single division of the US government, which is awesome. That was an executive order from several years back. And I'm glad that it's maintained its position because at least we have someone that is identified and accountable to the AI implementations within the organizations and the departments within the US Gov. Finding the right matrix of build versus buy is very difficult, though. And that goes for anyone across the board. So I think those are some of the good news and the good highlights that everyone's aware. Everyone's aware, everyone's interested, everyone's trying to figure out the right use case, and everyone's going to talk about some aspect of it, but not everything that they're doing.
We have some great questions coming in. We lost Nick for just a short period here. And so I'm going to queue up one of the questions for you, Rob. Um,
Sure.
Here we have, what is the standard for AI guardrails? What would you suggest for those of us who are trying to figure out how to start?
Yeah. What I strongly always suggest is your AI guardrails within your organization are going to be independently different than everyone else's, right? One is, do you work with patent, warrant, trademark, right, proprietary information that you can't allow externally? Okay, if that's true, and that's a majority of what you do as an organization, you have to be very clear and intentional about what AI tools you adopt. You probably may be looking at, rolling your own servers that you can run AI off of, whether they're virtual or on-prem, versus using an external tool. So that tolerance is really, really critical. Also, setting up a good standard of what is build, right? Spinning your own versus what is buy and consuming what's off the shelf is really critical. But I think the biggest portion of this is will and always will be, when you're looking at guardrails, look at setting macro categories of AI use cases and applying individual guardrails for those, right? Oh, this is a content generation use case. Great. We're going to use this set of rules and standards. Oh, we're going to do data and analytics. Great. We're going to use this set of standards. Oh, we're going to use this. That's how you kind of align to those. I think that's really important, because the use case will have different guardrails as well as the data it's connected to. So if you set guardrails around how you're going to use it, specific to the use case, what data it has access to, and then what the users can do with it, those are your three different layers that wind up giving you a good foundation when it comes to governance.
And Rob, thank you. I am fully back and have now paid my Wi-Fi bill. We'll jump specifically into the questions. And I should have started this off by saying, if you do have questions, please put it into the chat. I know a lot of you have already preempted that and have a lot of questions there. So I'll go through them, not necessarily the order that they came, but hopefully the order of interest. And we'll kind of do quick reactions from you for these
Sure.
questions. One of them that gets asked a lot is, has there been any advances in publicly available tools to detect deepfakes?
Oh yeah, there's some really awesome tools that are in the market. I want to talk through two specifically, right? So there's a bunch of third-party software as a solution services that use AI to detect deepfake technology. I'm not going to plug anyone specifically, but there's some that are extremely good out there to detect whether a voice, an image, a video, etc., has a level of deepfake created information in it, and it's based on a bunch of things such as the physics that are involved, depth of field, pixelation, digital IDing, and that type of stuff. So that's already out there. There's some people that are tackling it, and the tools are extremely good. Some of them are even open source from these vendors. So super cool. The second layer is this digital watermarking that's happening. So Google has a tool that's called SynthID. They embed it into text, image, audio, so anything that comes from Google actually has Google SynthID attached to it, which gives you a notification that this content is fake. Okay, so great. So we have third parties that are doing it. We have foundational models are doing it. And we also have C2PA. Okay, C2PA is a nonprofit organization that sets the standard on how information is embedded in AI generated content to let systems like LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook know that this content is AI generated. So we've got a couple fail safes in there. Well, what's the issues? Google SynthID is really easy to be removed, right? If you go onto LinkedIn and you post an AI generated photo, if you just crop it 1 pixel, right, on the edges, it removes the synthetic ID aspect of things. So it bypasses it. And your third party SaaS providers, they cost money for you to do anything at scale. So there are some guardrails in place. There is some level of movement forward, and there is some nonprofit organizations. The good news is that this is like clearly top of mind. We've seen Senate and Congress and bills go through and pass about deepfake CSAM content or exploitative content of individuals that have been signed into law now, to build out what that actually looks like from a holistic perspective on prosecuting people that do make content that is explicit. But that's happening right now on X with Grok and its tools, right? So it's ever present and happening across the board.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how the different data is used to train, be it Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok? One of the questions is, are these platforms using the same set of data? Are they using the same database when asked a question? And can that be biased?
Yeah. So intrinsic bias within artificial intelligence will always be there. Different platforms do use different technology or different data sets to enhance their technology, right? Let's logically think Google has a monopoly over all Google searches, all YouTube, and a bunch of other assets. So they're going to use that content, right? OpenAI famously was potentially scraping all of the web for theirs and using that and going through lawsuits on that side of things. So there's not only lawsuits on the copywriting side of things to making sure that only specific information is put in the AI tools to build it, but also specific vendors or foundational model creators are using specific AI tools, right? That's why we see Google Nano Banana really outpace a lot of the other image generation tools because, well, Google has access to probably the world's largest image and video tooling out there, inclusive of YouTube. So yes, they're using different ones. Yes, there's bias, right?
Mm.
If you ask your AI, do you think I'm a male or female? It's going to give you an answer. And that answer is going to be based on how you talked to the AI, as well as what information it has. So it's pretty consistent there that there will be bias. It's our jobs as human to understand that it is going to be there. It's unlikely that it'll ever be removed because AI's job is to sound human, and there is no unbiased human in the world. So unfortunately, it's going to be there because that's how the technology works now.
Yeah. No, and that makes complete sense. And that the continuum of how that's biased, be it, if you're using Grok or if you're using OpenAI based models, changes based on what company and what their core values are in releasing that type of data. With so many layoffs happening, attributed to what a lot of corporate executives say is according to AI adoption. How do you balance employee satisfaction with adopting AI technology?
Yeah, there's a couple really interesting aspects when it comes to making sure you're using AI the right way versus using AI the wrong way. And this is a little bit of like business ethics to a degree, but my prerogative has always been when implementing an artificial intelligence system. It doesn't matter if it's with a massive energy company or a major retailer within the United States or the US government. My goal and my conversation track is always the same. Okay. A human has to start this process and a human has to end this process. I can use artificial intelligence as the big burger bun in the middle, right? Or the meat between the two burger buns. Without the human, though, we are losing potential knowledge on how to do something, and we are leaving chance to the AI because AI is to a degree a prediction model, right? You can ask artificial intelligence the same thing several
Mm.
times and it may give you a different answer. The human's job is to wade through that and work through that. So if I use human first and last, I'm coupling humans with artificial intelligence versus replacing them. A good example of this is instead of firing my entire customer service team as a major organization or that works and has an outsourced team somewhere, I can use artificial intelligence as a dialect changing tool so that my customer service reps, when they get a call in, it sounds like they're talking to someone from the same nation that the caller is, right? So there's
Mm.
no more, are you based in the US? Like, no, give me the manager, blah, blah. You can go through and solve a customer's problem, right? Better, faster, which means the customer is going to have a better experience and the employee is going to have a better experience as well because they're not getting yelled at. This is actually done, by the way, right? An outsourced customer service firm used a dialect changing AI, and they wound up having like a 200% increase on customers going through this experience with this dialect changing AI, and like a 300% increase on internal employees because they weren't getting yelled at by customers. So it makes sense in some ways, but
Mm.
you have to marry human with the AI, not just expect AI to replace a person wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And you wrote a good piece on this on LinkedIn that you called Principle One, Human First and Last. We'll go ahead and try and put a link into that. But if you're looking to follow Rob a little more, a lot of his LinkedIn posts and LinkedIn. I what do we call them? Do we call them blogs, thought pieces, mini white papers on LinkedIn?
All the above. No, so I think they're called posts, but I run a newsletter on there as well. The newsletter is a little bit longer, posts are a little bit shorter, but please,
Mm,
everyone, everywhere, connect with me. I'm happy to answer and field your questions directly.
yeah.
My role is to be public, so it's nice to say I have a LinkedIn and I can have conversations with people.
Right, and that's fantastic because one of the challenges of finding people who are tremendously good at their jobs within cyber and risk and AI security is to not be public, and that makes them better at that job. And so, thank you for doing the service of providing the wisdom. Well, as we slowly wrap, I would love for you to give us a little introduction about the forthcoming book that you're working on, The Age of Intelligent Propaganda. Give us some background. What's the highlight reel? So, and when can we expect it?
Yeah, this actually is a really great story. I was on a different podcast about a year and a half ago, and this is anyone can steal this podcast question, but they said, Rob, if you looked at your bookshelf, what would be the predominant amount of books that you've read in your lifetime? And I went, oh, that's a great question. And I scrolled through and looked at my audiobooks and I looked at my actual bookshelf. And I realized that like a bulk of the things that I had read were related to some type of propaganda, right? World War II
Mm,
propaganda or GWAT propaganda, because I found that it's very interesting when you combine the artistic nature of humans with the explicit messaging of a regime, dictator, etc., government, organization. And there's something very unique that happens there when within the eco system of being a human, right? Because we are all tribal in some way. So that kind of kicked this off. I fully admit, right? I used artificial intelligence to help me write this book, right? I wrote a first and a second draft, and then I used AI to expand and expound on these. And right, I used it to do some editing, and I used a slew of different AI tools, which is really super cool, right? So I did Gemini for this portion, and Claude for this portion, ChatGPT for this portion,
mm,
and then I brought it into some other tools. So that was really the impetus of the book was what does the world look like when AI can create propaganda? Where has it come from? And what's the potential doomsday scenario that happens, right? We're already, and most people kind of agree with this, is like unsure if you can trust anything on the internet. And that happened like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe. But we still live in social
yeah.
media. We still live on podcasts, right? I could have had a face filter on this whole time and been someone completely different, right? Does Rob even really exist? These are the types of things that we kind of address in the book and pull forward,
I'm
which is
starting
quite
to
an
had
exciting.
had I not met you in person, I'm starting to be convinced of myself right now that maybe Rob is just a bot.
Yeah. And listen, I'll be the first to admit some of my clients on the private sector side have a chat agent that's built on the method, approach, conversations, talk tracks that
Mm-mm.
I've had. So they can refine their own idea before it ever gets to me and say, hey, here's my idea. Here's the kind of chat conversation. Instead of being in a 90-minute, we can have a 20-minute meeting. Right? Just a workforce efficiency tool for sure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wrap up with my question based off of these is what is the best case scenario that you see going into the next couple of years, and what is the worst case scenario when it comes to AI risks?
Best case scenario is that each and every person in the world has a artificial intelligence partner that helps them through all aspects of their day, choosing meals based on their weight goals, giving them recommendations based on their biometric data, giving them tips for their partner, and you have a beautiful coexistence symbiotic with an artificial intelligence tool so that your life is better, and it's better from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to bed, and it's optimizing your life for you so that you have an incredible day, week, month, year. The black dark side of this is that exact same situation, but you don't control the means and outcomes of that AI, and someone else does. and it's a subscription service, and you have to pay for ads and all the Black Mirror fun things that could happen when it comes to something that is parasitic versus symbiotic with you. So I think that the worst case scenario is we lose any type of digital security. It is gone. We have digital ID to get on the internet. All things are monitored, tracked, and cataloged by artificial intelligence. There is no anonymity in what you do in the virtual world, and it's easily paired to your physical existence. I think that that's a massive security risk, and the influence that could potentially happen there gets very scary very quickly, depending on, which side of the political aisle you sit on, or which government you align to, or where you live and were born in the world.
Well, Rob, on those closing thoughts, if somebody wants to follow you, like I do on LinkedIn, I know Jen does, if somebody wants to come to your talks, if somebody wants to see your recent postings, how can they go about following them?
Yeah, LinkedIn is number one. I try to keep a professional network. So like, comment, connect, get with me on there. Send me a LinkedIn message. That's really, really easy. I do have a website. You just go to robpetrosino.com. If you wanted to send me a personal message there and you're not on any of the socials. I do have an X account that I ignore drastically, as well as an Instagram account that I post about coffee. But besides those, LinkedIn is really the easiest way to get a hold of me. But yeah, I'm here for questions. I'm here for concerns. I'm here for comments. If there's anything that anyone has that we didn't get into the chats with, send me a message. I'm happy to chat and hear what's going on.
Great. Well, Rob, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and helping us kick off season 2 of Making AI Possible. So we will see you around the conference circuits, the LinkedIn posts, everything amazing you're doing at the upper echelons of government, and the symbiotic relationship, all those fancy words with the commercial sector. So again, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.